Great morning and welcome to COGNIZANT Softvision webinar, Transforming While Performing. As you know, history suggests that a crisis always leads to innovation. Here's our chance. Business has already figured out that the recovery from the pandemic will be digital, at least most of the businesses. And what data shows, or what McKinsey study shows, that we have vaulted at least 5 years forward in the consumer and the business digital adoption, in a matter of around 8 weeks. The move to being digital is no more a choice, but a mandate to succeed. For businesses managing a distributed workforce, being digitally driven, institutionalizing a digital first culture are some of the top priorities of business leaders now. Navigating these tectonic shifts while maintaining business continuity requires a tried and tested systematic approach. Today we have our CEO, Andres Angelani, who has built several partnerships of high-performing teams and advises his partners on how to create a culture that brings design and technology to engineer modern businesses. Andres was recognized just this year as a top 100 Hispanic executive in IT influencer in North America. He has also authored the much lauded book, Transforming While Performing: How to Build a Culture of Innovation with Partners. It's a must read for the CXOs globally who are in the transformation. Today, we also have the pleasure of hosting digital business leaders in Australia and APAC, our existing valuable customers, academia, especially Deakin University, COGNIZANT and COGNIZANT Softvision employees, and a wide variety of technology enthusiasts. Thanks for joining us today, and I will now hand it over to Andres.
Thank you, Girish. Hi, everyone. Pleasure. Hello, Australia. I'm behind the times here because I'm in New York. It's 7:04 p.m. here, so I'm a little bit delayed. So it's a pleasure to be with you here. We're going to talk about being digital and what that means. Now it's pretty relevant, right? It's not just acting as, but actually being. But we will do it as interactively as we can. And we have this tool called Audience Connect here. And as you can see, there is an access code over there. And I understand that you should have a link, but you could go and search Create with Google. You're going to find it's a web app or a mobile web app, so you can put that on your phone. And that will allow you to answer questions interactively. They're all multiple choices, not very difficult questions, but if you put that number there, we could go through a test before we start the presentation. So the first test is hard question. Who would you rather have lunch with? And you have a set of options there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait a little bit until you guys set up. You shouldn't download anything. It's just a web app, okay? You can do it from your computer or your mobile phone. Just click on the thing, vote, and then we'll see. Yeah, some of you are already there. Let's practice a little bit more with the next one, okay? How excited are you to be working from home? And this is a different thing. It's a slider, right? So let's see if we can play with the slider. If you connect right now, it should drive you directly into this question because it's synced up with my presentation. So let's see. Let's wait. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There you go. Okay, responses are coming. Okay, so transforming while performing, right? And let me ask you a question. Do we have a choice? I mean, we have to transform while we perform. The world will not stop. So this is an introductory kind of session on my book that has the same title. But before we start here, let me ask with a question. Do your parents work or worked in a software-related job? simple yes, no answer. So let's go in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Yep. So no is normally the answer, right? The previous generation didn't have software background. So why am I saying this? And let me just personalize this a little. I want you to meet Alex. He's from a small town in Romania. His parents work at the same jobs their whole life. Dad was a chemical factory, mom a school teacher. The second picture is Daniela. Daniela was born in Buenos Aires. She's the older of 3 sisters. Passion for technology drove her from a young age to desire and work in high-tech jobs, but she worked from the design field as a UX designer. And the next woman is Christina, and her parents met while she her dad was deployed in Japan. She's lived all over the world, and after high school, a job offered to put her through school to learn computer science. And today, she's a client partner and a technical director for COGNIZANT Softvision. And Alex lives in the East Coast, and he's a technical director here in New York City, where I live. So completely different experience from their parents, right? So 3 different people, 3 different paths, and examples of how technology really shifted the work life, and in a couple instances where they choose to live. So what we have to cover here today is going to be sort of an introductory on what's going on with the talent shortage crisis, right? Just to size the issue. And for context, we'll look into the industrial revolutions. We'll just go back, the challenges and opportunities that caused them, as well as the nuances between the revolutions of the past and the revolutions that today and are likely to happen in the future. And then number 3, we'll just develop a narrative here, which is what you see on the screen. What does it mean to transform while we perform and with purpose, right? So this is a 3-part statement, and it will be the driver of this presentation. You know, number 1 is making digital experiences more human with mastery as the core, second point, and then playing to fail. Let's park it here. We will explore these statements in depth and why it matters to be in digital. You can, I'm going to answer questions, but this is kind of a form in which it's best if you get it first in. So I'm going to go over the run now, and then please make sure that you post your questions in the chat window, and I'll pick them up at the end of the presentation. Okay, so let's get started. So you know, the 85 million people is the size of Germany, right? Korn Ferry released a study, and this is in 2018, stating that by 2030 we could see a talent shortage of 85 million people. Huge, right? It's probably the biggest talent gap that we've ever seen. And why is it so high? And you know, the reality is that some candidates like simple problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity, but others don't really have the technology training either. So what we were saying here is that talent development has not really factored in growth, right? It's the talent development is one thing, and then if work happens, it happens, but it seems that they're not connected. We believe that today, focusing on closing the talent gap is really an amazing opportunity to differentiate ourselves and make you not only fit, but ready for growth, right? So part of the presentation is going to focus on this. And the question really we're trying to solve here is there a systematic connection between both growths? One is the consequence of the other. Is this sort of a chicken and egg question? So let's see if we can come up with an answer. People really in business develop and grow all the time, but the maturity cycles between them don't really often align. If you look into the industrial revolutions, only a few people benefited in the short term. Lots of people were actually really losing from disruption. In the digital era, it really even takes much more time to develop the soft and the hard skills to be competent, which actually widens the gap. And that's why you've seen this has been increasing, right? So we need to build from the heart of the enterprise, from each company, a more holistic strategy. But if we go back in time, right, with these disruptions, our lives and the way society functions as a whole would be completely different, right? So after, think about after the semiconductors and the personal computer, there has also been a great deal of talk about the fourth industrial revolution. That is AI, augmented and virtual reality, 3D printing, connected things, decentralized networks, genome editing are all parts of this fourth that some people are talking about. So the combination of these technologies is really transforming our society. It's mostly software, so much so that it has become the business, right? Software has become the business. The impact in how we acquire and use products and services, how we learn, how we connect and live is really evolving in decades faster than our lives have evolved in hundreds of years right now. So while this transformation is happening, we are also starting to see higher purpose emerging. Some with organizations, sort of there is a culture fit that's required to really attract and retain the best, the most talented, the more disruptive, the more innovative. The term of digital transformation has become subjective, complex, overused really. Instead of trying to be, prescribed digital transformation, why don't we question ourselves? How can organizations become software companies that truly solve for the bigger issues that we face today, right? So the first step is to look at the current big issues, and rather than just complaining about them, see as an opportunity for progress. And, is this the best we can do with traffic, right? Is an education, and especially where I live in the US, is expensive and has no success guarantees. Not even a success fee, no skin in the game from the schools. Is it the best that we can actually do here? And this is apart from the fact that sometimes they are behind the curve. All industries are getting disrupted. Really, the retail sector is facing an immediate sort of adapt or die scenario. Companies like Amazon are seen as threats, but if you think about it, some retailers really needed a shakeup. Call it cost sensitivity, price pressure, whatever the root cause is. Somewhere along the way, the customer service was thrown out over the fence, or out the window. In this case, over the fence. You can see, so it lost touch with what really matters. And what about the relationship we have with technology? Some people have come up really here, like with some designs to deal with walking and looking at your phones. Of course, this is a joke, but really the relationship we have with our phones is not as high quality as it could be, right? We are constantly looking down. The metaphor from a design perspective is not ideal. So this is also subject for improvement, and it will improve. In travel, well, right now we're not traveling, but when we travel like that, it's kind of, a collapse, right? So if you had to find common denominators, experience was lost as we scale the business and industry, right? That's what really, if you look at what really happened, is as business got bigger, as industries got globalized, experience was sort of, diluted. There's lots of room for improvement, lots of challenges, which also means that there's a great deal of opportunity as well, right? So I hope you agree this is time for change in mindset. As you can see, I mean, industrial strength processes, these industrial revolutions, they try to, in a way, replace craftsmanship, but we've come to a place, right, where technology kind of re-enables the scaling of craftsmanship, which was not possible before. So let's bring it to the first point, right? Where emotional connection really was rationalized, was diluted to extinction. Our first point is making digital experiences human, and that is possible right now in the digital age. How to make innovation sustainable, right? To continue growing the business, and while doing that, make a real impact in the lives that we really touch. The human aspect. This doesn't mean really hiring a human to talk about your product or be the face of your company. It has nothing to do with that. It means to build an emotional connection, sort of as the core purpose of the experience. If we cannot achieve that, trust me that the investments that we make, really, the investment doesn't mean much more than the old ways without the technology, right? So people will not engage if there is no experience, or at least, your product will never differentiate, your connection will not differentiate from the competition. So let's vote now again. And this is again about technology use, right? How do you guys connect? Do you spend more hours of the day with your computer or through your computer or through your phone, or in direct connect with other humans. In lockdown, the answer is pretty obvious, but, after COVID, still, I think that the answer will be the same, right? So let's see if you guys are ready to vote, and we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we love to connect in person, but most of the connection happens through a digital device. And how many are we thinking about this now, right? So if everything or most things happen through a digital device, really, the opportunity for devices to really understand emotional state is really, really high. So we can do something about it. But if I ask you, who's working on a project that involves emotional state perception and experience through technology? Not many, right? Not many. So let's look at some examples. There's definitely room for improvement. Like, so this is Rana. She's the CEO and founder of Affectiva. This is a small company, but very innovative company. The technology that Affectiva creates captures facial reactions and analyzes the emotional responses in an effort to integrate technology with emotion. And it helps to kind of add the EQ through deep learning. As you know, our faces are vessels of emotional communication. We transmit more data with our expressions than what we say. So Affectiva collected billions of frames from about 7 million faces in about 100 countries, and they ran deep learning algorithms on these images that increase and of course increase the level of emotional perception to accuracy, all as the database got larger, right? So right now it's able to quickly predict the most accurate emotional response. This is part of the future, right? Business that understands and adapts to emotion. And this is an input, but there could be multiple inputs. So let's look at some practical examples, right? We're in a cycle, and we're getting into a cycle that's really products and services are really experiences, and then so refining content is experience and getting more input that allow us to understand the emotional response is what makes software much more engaging and products much more successful. So imagine making the car emotionally sensitive with the aim of improving safety on the road. Or remember the traffic picture at the start of this presentation. Now project the impact we can make to traffic, right? Emotionally aware systems, better road safety, and more efficient flow. So of course we need infrastructure here to make this possible, but software can make a great improvement just by connecting all the different nodes in the network, right? And then through artificial intelligence and emotional perception, understand and prioritize and advise, right? So there could be a network that effectively does that, and the technology is there for us. And these humanized experiences can also change the way we learn. And it is expected that by 2024, more than 40% of learning management tools will be actually enabled by AI. So envision the possibilities of emotionally aware intelligence systems that can process the state of mind of students as they're going through the coursework, and as a function of attention state and interpretation of emotional cues, the system will change and suggest different techniques to get students in an optimal learning zone. This is of great importance right now under COVID. If we had something like this, it would be phenomenal. That again, the technology is there, right? I have a couple of my four, I have 4 kids, 2 of them with some degrees of attention deficit. And this kind of technology will enable us to, or at least give us a little bit of peace of mind. We have to be monitoring them all the time while they're at work, especially when they're working from home and disconnected, right? So to round it up, we need to elevate to an experience that helps us not only understand the interactions, but rather understand and process and apply the real-time data behind the interactions, and the behaviors that would drive to a desired outcome. The entire experience design ecosystem then learns and feeds product engineering in a never-ending journey that rediscovers and reinvents those product life cycles. So it's not just about creating a product, launching it there, and then creating a different version. It's about a constantly learning experience where AI actually helps us understand the data and process the data in different ways, understand patterns that we couldn't have known or we couldn't have found out linearly or through any kind of common dashboard or analytics, right? So let's talk about, products for a bit. Have you ever imagined an old brick phone with an iPhone screen, right? So those things will never happen. And these are products that have really revolutionized the industry. Remember the old BlackBerry, you paste an iPhone screen on that, it would never work, right? So in the case of Apple, they impacted their product line by marrying experience with design from the very, very core, right? So this obviously not only helped Apple sell, it really helped the valuation and its future valuation, which was always obviously reflected in their stock price. So why don't we perform and innovate this way? What's standing in the middle from us and innovation, right? So, and this is one aspect that I'd like to bring up as a potential problem. Technology teams, engineering teams, many times deny that they need to operate across silos. The product also does the same, especially product teams. So bringing the business, design, the product people, and the engineering together. We need to bring them together really to create that experience so that we don't need multiple cycles. We can do it in one single cycle, right? And then we test quickly and reiterate. So my point here is to achieve the business outcomes that we want, we normally depend on others, right? To elevate the experience, we need multiple disciplines working together. So we need to find a way to partner and break down that silo mentality. So, this brings to the fact, right? Transforming experience is not just an engineering problem anymore. It's a design challenge, it's a business challenge, and of course, an engineering challenge. So if we work alone, like the digital versus the not so digital teams, we will not achieve the vision and the purpose, right? We need a joint culture, a new DNA. The old and the new in an organization need to come together with that transformational purpose. But now, let's ask a question again. In working with partners, and partners could be stakeholders, managers, other divisions, supply chain, partners are people that you depend on and then depend on you, right? How agile is the workflow, right? So, and this again, it's a question, it has a slider. If you say zero friction, we're talking about absolutely zero problems. It's a perfect agile flow. And 100 is absolutely everything is blocked, right? So answer in the way that you are used to, either in your company or know of other companies that are in this process of transformation. 64%. Yeah, there is more friction than not, for sure. 60, 70, the norm, just to give you an idea, is about 70, 75%. There is quite a lot of friction because these divisions haven't learned to partner, work together. So, an innovation culture requires everybody to be involved and to share a vision and a set of values, right? So we can distinguish two types of partnerships. And you see a lot more detail about this in the book, but one is the transactional partnership, which is the one that we're normally used to. It's a tactical delivery and to prescribe requirements, really. In software development, for example, you wait on an interface, you work on a component that somebody's working on, and then you assume that's going to be done. And if it's not done, then you have problems, and the velocity kind of comes down to zero, and and then there's technical debt and rework. That's transactional. Transformational, though, there is a co-created relationship that is driven by measurable business outcomes. I mean, we share the same outcomes where we agree how we nurture and motivate the people that are working in the program, how we embrace the notion of market disruption, where we do it, and where, how that elevates product design and engineering accordingly. So, we really integrate at that sort of quote unquote DNA level. So we are synchronized. We form a consistent culture that not only lives for that program, that outlives a program and refines itself as we grow, right? That's what we mean with transformational, and that's where we want to go, right? So we've seen across hundreds of projects in our experience that many companies that, really what enables transformational partnerships is a compatible culture. But the atomic units of partnerships are, of course, teams, right? So our teams, we call them pods, and in their raw form, we could say pods may be squad, scrum, Kanban, safe teams. We don't have a prescription of what agile methodology to approach, but we rather, really consider what's in the environment that facilitates flow or not. You can apply anything, really. I mean, it's not about the ceremonials and the very nitty-gritty detail of a methodology versus the other. So I'll talk more about pods in a few minutes, but let me explain why this matters. So let's look at the data. So at higher maturity in a product ecosystem, right, where we're creating products, the impact is very significant when you compare to agile teams that don't really have this level of engagement. And these metrics are across the board, hundreds of pods working in programs for over a year. And the performance boost really as the pods perform is impressive. These are high maturity pods versus kind of entry level type of pods. And as you can see, they're like double efficiency in design, 3 times velocity. And obviously, because there's, these people, we're saying, well, but the people that need to be in the pods need to be high skilled and very experienced. And to be honest with you, it's more about the balance of seniority. It's not about having all superstars in the team, right? So really the cost per feature goes down because there's normally more velocity and less rework, right? And that's what we're looking for in an ecosystem that produces digital work. So this is just a reminder, post questions, we'll answer at the end of the session. And then sort of rounds out the very first point. Now, mastery, right? So in this section with mastery at the core is about the talent, right? So how do we figure out ways to foster the development of the talent? And this naturally ties with the beginning of this talk when I talk about the talent gap, right? But also mastery is what builds people that works in pods, right? So we build the talent that's going to work together there in cross-functional teams, and pods build transformative partnerships. So it's sort of all connected. Our point of view is that mastery is at the core, is a fundamental component to being digital, and it needs to be within each organization, right? So talent, if you think about it, talent mastery and growth are connected. As we always say in our communities, we work in communities at Softvision. Mastery is when you can teach it, right? So people can teach about something and they are proficient at teaching. And organizational mastery is when a business can actually teach itself and basically survive, disrupt itself and survive with the new trends and the new technologies that are coming up. So you'd be surprised to learn how much of the growth of your company really correlates to the personal growth of the people that work there. It's very intimately connected, but it's seldom explored in depth. And so let's start with an example, right? And this funny one, not all drivers are professional drivers. So I'd like to kind of give you an example that's sort of a Darwinian approach. So, to drive a cab, you need to get a license. They call this medallions. I live in New York, and at a few years ago, these medallions, taxi licenses, were really booming here. So as you know, if you want to drive, the cost, to buy a permit was in some cases around $1 billion. $1 billion, that would be a little bit too much. $1 million, and people were investing in these. So, it used to be quite a sound investment if you look at it. Look at the cost rise from 2008 to 2014, right? But then what happened, right? It just crashed down, and Uber and Lyft happened. And if you look and now the cost of a Medallion is as little as 100K. Nobody is buying them anymore. So what happened? You know, why did this such disruption happen? So you see that the Medallion program culturally wasn't set up for success from the beginning. There was very little purpose. The city never thought about improving the service. They never thought about adding mastery and creating digital products. And no, they thought strictly about having inventory of medallions, and which available, and then create a sort of a supply demand with constrained supply. So instead of investing in the drivers, the concepts from the beginning, the experience, and helping with technology, even developing the technology, they really didn't do that, right? So just to contrast, what's your experience of running a company in New York? I'm sure that a lot of people visited New York, not now, not recommended, but I'm sure that you've done it in the past, a lot of you. So if you look at this picture, that's the back of a cab, right? And if you look at that picture, do you know what that is? That's the cab, that's the back of a police car, right? This one versus this one, right? So it's like as if they went through the same initial design sessions, and then, you know, the cops customized it later, right? So it feels kind of, in a car, really constrains you being arrested, right? The experience is really terrible. So now look at the ride-sharing companies, right? They just fill the void. The cost of opportunity here is that the money that could have flown into the city and improved the city is now in the hands of a couple of companies, right? So let's try to analyze this in context. If you think about the culture of a company being influenced by three forces: the appetite for growth, the mastery of that company, you know, how they feed their talent and grow their talent, and the autonomy of the talent, where would you place the CAB Medallion, right? You need autonomy in order to innovate, obviously, right? Where do you place them? Right at the bottom, right? With low growth, low autonomy, and low mastery, you know, really that's where it sits, which I believe every taxi driver who invested in the Medallion would agree with, right? Imagine those guys that invested, you know, right before it crashed. Now let's consider a different example, the other side, right? Where they fit in this 3D cube, and Google and their Google X division, right? X really is Google's innovation lab that ensures their growth and longevity as a company. And part of the founding vision of X was to solve for long-term challenges through research and invention versus focusing purely on short-term innovation, right? So one of the examples, Loon, for example, delivers connectivity from balloons flying 20 kilometers up in the stratosphere, and really poses a unique set of engineering challenges. Loon combines advancements in material science, atmospheric modeling, machine learning, communication systems, and more. Many, many disciplines coming together in these cross-functional teams, right? Imagine the amount of multiple disciplines, right? That's what X culture is about. It's a culture that cultivates mastery and creates new solutions, while people teach themselves from their own disciplines, right? While forming solutions with high purpose. Obviously, it's the other extreme, but it's a high contrast. Can we be somewhere in the middle? Of course. It will definitely move the needle being in the middle. Now, what does Google sit in our quadrant? Obviously, they score pretty high. They focus on autonomy. That's the opposite of rigid management. They allow trial and error, and on mastery. And by encouraging mastery in the pursuit of fearless innovation, they score very high for growth as well, right? So again, that connection between mastery and growth, right? And the emphasis here is on the trial, right? It's just trial and error and reinvention, and always be connected with reality, with real users, with real scenarios. They went all in, they continue to build for improvement, they invested in their people. And now, obviously, they've experienced it and are experiencing growth, because without the investment in improvement, in progress, they wouldn't have mastered their domains. So again, just banging on the same issue, mastery fuels growth, which means that mastery is a sound investment. Let me describe my personal experience. A few years ago at Softvision, we saw that we needed to do something different to continue attracting, motivating, and growing our talent. So how do we actually do this, right? who could tell our story. So, as you know, we do product innovation, digital products for clients. So it's really vital that we understand their culture, challenges, give them an outside view. And then we put together a cross-functional team that we call pod that will help create the product design experience, tie that to results, right? And then obviously mastery is all we've got. It's our core. So retaining the people was absolutely key for us. And we really made a great improvement. So we broke down the walls, we connected talent globally, and we call this talent guilds, right? So guilds, right? Why guilds? So guilds is a medieval word, and they were formed by craftsmen to work together and foster growth and idea sharing amongst their peers. And then hundreds of years later, this is still the case. It's so important, right? So guilds are community systems, really. They're interconnected with new technologies now possible to scale craftsmanship by connecting the talent and giving them autonomy to thrive. Because guilds are also a teaching system where everybody builds together, they're sort of the vessel for growth, right? Remember the three guys that I started the presentation with, Alex? Those who they envision themselves as not connected to innovation in the beginning, but now they're fueling the growth of our business because they've been exposed to that continuous mastery. They're building and strengthening their guilds with their traits. They expand their capabilities just by really being connected to each other within their communities. And so why would organizations think of guilds today, right? How do they drive mastery in their present day? Really, guilds address the issues that we're experiencing with talent shortage. They create a feeling of belonging that goes beyond strict functional roles, and they improve not only retention, but also mind share. With guilds, these communities inspire trust among their members, and with autonomy being so critical transformation, trust must come into play. Being a part of a guild creates trust, and trust makes purpose credible and feasible. Purpose within a specific role, within a community, within a company, helps drive and amplify engagement. So that all together forms the right culture. By amplifying the engagement, we are positively influencing business and career outcomes. So people feel that they're driving their business transformation. So how do the guilds actually come together, right? So we said, guilds are system communities. They group by talent areas. And then, mobile is a guild. As you saw, we call it guild architecture. Enterprise software is a guild. And then they have various communities that specialize that guild over there. But they come together to innovate as when they mix, right? In these cross-functional teams, and we call them pods. So let's look at this. So when you think of what makes a pod different from a traditional Agile team, it's designed specifically to bridge gaps, right? And the purpose of the pod is to design and engineer an outcome. Outcome is not just to do a little piece of code, it's to engineer an outcome. That's why design and engineering and QA, they're all together there in product. The framework connects different guilds together, ensuring that not one team owns the final delivery of the product, one or more, product or feature, but they have the capability to go end to end. And at its core, it's built on Agile efficiency. We measure KPI, and it's built on performance. It thrives on performance, provides the ability to scale, not only easily, but virtually, without compromising performance or delivery. The world has been forced to shift to our new sort of normal, but it's nothing new for us because, we've been mastering this for years, ensuring continuous delivery, engagement, and the right outcomes, right? So when people are a member of a community, if they're in one physical place or not, they're still connected, right? So think about some of the old communities of the past that created phenomenal innovation. Linux, Mozilla created Firefox, right? These are communities that did not live in one single physical place, but they created innovation nonetheless, and extremely highly complex products that really innovated how we work and live today, right? So as you can see, we could not do what we do without pods. But let's continue, right? So we went number 1, number 2, we are number 3 now, play to fail. And what do we mean here, right? This leads me to this point. It's just to solve for the talent gap. We sort of, in a way, we gotta have fun. There has to be fun in the system, but fun doesn't mean Nerf guns and ping pong tournaments. It's not just about that. It's about how we integrate fun and engage teams in their actual work. It's a term where it means we celebrate diversity, inclusion, and personal identity. It means we play to fail. And what is that? Or why do we want to fail? Maybe to learn, right? To make mistakes so we can learn from them. So we don't have to win all the time. We have to succeed, right? Succeed is longer, right? We don't have to win all the time. We need to understand better. So grab your phones now, a question, right? So this is a question. Wake up if you're, it's the morning for you, you should be awake. Do you personally feel that it's okay to make mistakes? And this is a very simple yes or no answer. And this is your personal, it's a personal question, right? Yes or no. We're gonna go in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, so yes, and I agree, right? So now, do companies encourage failure the same way they encourage success? And this question will go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 seconds, and now we go. Okay, there you go, 100% on the no, right? Okay, so let me tell you, this is personal for me, and I will tell you some of my this is probably one or two of my thousands of failures, right? But the woman on the left is Marta Argerich. I'm from Argentina, South American, and she's also native Argentinian. She's one of the top concert pianists in the world. When I was a teenager, I wanted to be a concert pianist, and I was, really fascinated with this woman. I wanted to be like, just perform like her. And I've been playing the piano. I still play since I was 5, and I thought it was great, but really I wasn't. So I sort of had to move into a different area. I failed, but really I have carried this love for music in everything I do. And this has helped me understand sort of the emotional side of engineering, the soft within the hard science, sort of the created inside the analytic, and sort of led me to deep love for craftsmanship and mastery, right? So music sort of was an agent in that forming. So I continue playing now. I sort of take classes from now when the time permits. And this is definitely going to be my retirement plan, right? So I didn't abandon it, but it was a failure, right? And it was hurtful when it happened. But now it's something really I realized in hindsight that helped me really be who I am, right? The second one, that's a brand, actually. That's my last name, but it's my family business back in Argentina. It's a farm and a charcuterie business. I'm Italian descent. My family came from Italy. So we basically, that was the, that's what's supposed, I was the eldest. I am the eldest son, and that was what I was supposed to do, right? You know what? I sort of developed the software to run the business when I was 17. And that was a fun experience. I really deepened my learning, my understanding of coding, but sort of that really started up in software engineering. It wasn't cut out for to run the pursuit of business, and escaping the Italian the Italian family was not easy. But really, it really helped me develop something that produced real outcomes. And that I got in touch with, how I understood a business problem and created technology that solved it. So I have good history with failure. Things that really felt pretty frustrating at some point in my life then projected me forward. So fail really is sort of a heavy word. How do we make this more digestible and create an environment where this actually leads to change? How do we make it fun, right? So we worked at this as Softvision. That has been our passion, like allow people to try safe, try cheap, try fast, right? I'm sure you've heard fail fast, which is like, what the hell is this? It's the right environment to test and learn, right? So fail, a couple of years ago, we came out with an idea to help sort of engagement happen more naturally. And we decided to actually make play a part of how we work together as pods, right? Just introduce the gaming inside of software engineering. As you know, gamers are in our nature as humans. They bring us together. We play since we're kids. So it's also proven that sharing and learning gets better through play. So we knew that a lot of us came from a game development background before Softvision. So we're like, how do we apply this learning experience to software development? So we built GameOpods. So this was built in two worlds, really, that interact with each other. The talent world, that was to improve careers, that mastery component, and the delivery world, which was to produce those outcomes, to actually create the software that solve for business problems, right? So that's what GameOpods is all about. And it not only measures the obvious, it also tracks team dynamics, collaboration, personal development, encourages positive components like new ideas, teamwork, good communication, and of course, business outcomes delivered, right? It embraces our culture and incentivizes a sort of growth mindset. When you're in the GameOpods, you're in a quest, like it shows there, right? You can earn badges and trophies, and then you can level up. So let's round it up. So we're caught. You've seen a lot of content today. We're caught. We're sort of taught to think that in order to transform, there's a prescription to being digital. But the reality is that there's no such thing, right? The three things that I've mentioned today require iteration, making digital experiences human again. Sort of this level of performance requires mastery, requires teamwork. They require multiple disciplines that we grow together, and they need a continuous mindset of transformation, so they need failure. Focusing on today, we are making pretty relevant technology progress, right? We are connecting much more thanks to social media, but are we doing it with purpose? Are we sharing with purpose? That's the quality of those connections, right? What is the quality of those connections? Are we teaching ourselves, or are we masking ourselves under a social profile? So we are on the cusp, and this is the way we see it, of another innovation, one that's inclusive, where technology impacts both customer and employees' experience alike, and one that focuses on really the bigger issues, the one that promotes an inclusive culture. So in this era, we can't really apply industrial approaches to transforming services and products to experiences. We need to abandon the mindset of industrial scale and shift to a mindset where craftsmanship and humanity can scale through software, through technology, because now we have that. We didn't have that before. Now we can do it. And, that's what really will make digital revolutions focus on us, the humans, right? And a focus on being able to connect innovation to purpose, to inclusivity, and of course, drive growth for the business, right? Because without growth, there's not much we can do, right? But really, we think that, the Industrial Revolution 4 is really not industrial. It's the beginning of digital, and that we are not understanding this very well yet, but we will. And we are now trying to define what digital 2 means, right? Industrial approaches really cease to work. So we need to shift value systems to forge a digital culture. And just to summarize, super summarization here, where software is core to the business, in product and services, our experiences, what will differentiate this experience is the human touch, nothing else. And then we need to ensure that the culture nurtures development, and that the whole organization believes that people fuel growth and longevity for the business. And third, play to fail is the reality of transformation. It's not one solution solves all, and then bam, we are just suddenly transformed. It's a continuous cross-functional team journey of co-creation and constant refinement. Teams really that find that joy in the process are those that sustain innovation. And I'm sure that you're doing or some of this already, right? So this hopefully gives you a bit of a perspective and focus of what we see across many industries, really hundreds of projects that we witness. The higher purpose for us all really is to put the needs of our young first. Remember that talent gap? I hope you leave this virtual room agreeing that through the tailored implementation and constant refinement of some of these principles into your corporate cultures, we will be laying the foundation for you, our kids, for our kids, and for you to realize sort of your dreams. It's sort of a revolution that truly addresses the bigger issues. And that's what we mean by sort of transforming work performing. I thank you so much for this. It was quite compact, and now we have a few minutes for questions if there are.
Yes, I'll read off a few questions. We have two that are very similar. For organizations that are stuck in their old stubborn cultural habits, yet profitable, what do you recommend the first key step or action that a digital pioneer can do to start building the appetite for digital transformation?
So the first one is to really, we experience this a lot, is how do you build that pull force, that traction? So we believe in alignment of goals across maybe product and engineering, and showing that crossing functionality, working as one team, regardless of who reports into whom, it's just you really united by a clear, measurable goal, and proving quick wins, because obviously as working together we can go much faster, will start shifting the organization towards this model. This model needs to, transformation needs to prove itself. It's not just about, going, and just paying a lot of money to get a coaching on Agile or whatever. I mean, like a lot of companies do. I mean, those are useful, but I think it's the transformation needs to start from the gut of the corporation and supported by the top, right? And it's not just about throwing a few Agile coaches over there, just people come and talk about product development. Really, it's about the organization taking hold and working together. The digital people, the non-digital people, the ones that understand the domain of the business and the ones that understand how to build digital products need to really come together under goals that are measurable and with a cadence and serious, right? Where, top management really oversees and tries to unblock whatever is stopping the flow.
Great. Another two questions that are very similar. How do we sell this concept of playing to fail to clients? Or how, from your experience, have you convinced the end customer with this?
Yeah, so we do a lot of we involve the users early on, and we really set expectations the right way, right? So think about, if you're saying, well, we're in a beta, it's closed. You're a participant of this beta. There are going to be a lot of issues, but we want to get your input. We want you to fail with us, for example, as we're building. That transparency normally is very well received, at least from our point of view, right? And as you're improving the service, for example, you don't have to be just engineering products like we are, but if you're improving the services, the closer you are with the customer, the closer are those stakeholders, the better the service will be, right? And the customer, if in this transformational partnership, they will be willing to get that initial visibility, is whatever we're building makes sense for them in their own transformation journey. So we need to come together and be a lot more, transparent in how we go about things. If we work about, if we're working in black boxes with a lot of expectations, then obviously it's just the finger pointing will never go away, right? So we need to start eliminating the finger pointing when things go bad, which is, we reiterate and figure out what's not working process-wise, people-wise, technology-wise, and make the adjustments, but together.
Great. Two more questions that are both very similar. How is this being adapted in Cognizant? Is it possible to apply, and this is general, is it possible to apply this concept to a company like Cognizant in various aspects of what we do as a service company?
It is. We are starting, when we got acquired, and this was in 18, we got acquired with this sort of reverse merger concept, which means that now we are, obviously Cognizant is huge, 300,000 people. So our first set is in the 50,000s, and we are basically grouping and organizing ourselves as guilds and communities to first instill that mastery in that set, in that part of the organization. But yes, pretty much the first step is that incubate the culture of mastery through guilds and communities, and while doing that, really service our clients in cross-functional teams rather than just very specific or hyper segmented teams that just solve in a sort of a transactional way. We're changing that model. It takes time because the organization is very large, but we're moving forward.
All right, and then there's one more. In today's digital world, most enterprises like banking and industry are struggling with full stack versus specialist or cross-functional skills as one of the key ingredients for their success, and still missing the end game. Softvision has disrupted this culture and has been successful in delivering digital outcomes. From that context, what is your advice to similar industries in Australia, and what is the secret sauce?
This thing about full stack. So a full stack person, right? How many do you know is the question. How many can you build? How long does it take? Somebody that really understands front end really well, excels at it, back end really well, excels at it. If you fix the ecosystem of technology, or the technology components to a fixed level and tie them to a particular technology stack, maybe. But to be honest with you, the full stack person is not scalable in my view, in our view. We believe in cross-functional teams that will bring the required skill sets towards an outcome. And I guess there are philosophical points of view. I really don't adhere with building super people because they're the exception, not the rule. And given the amount of transformational work and digital products that we have to build and we will have to build in the future, if we think about that, the talent gap will widen even further. So I think that those are concepts that are made by product companies, technology product companies that have a lot of experience building their own tech and then selling those. And I'm talking about the Silicon Valley ones. It doesn't really apply to the world, really. It would be great, but if your starting point is, you need to, run a race and your starting point is professional and you've never run before, how can you do, right? So we believe in a much more growth mindset, gradual, where we have great front end and great back end and great design, but they work together in a team, and we rather focus on sophisticating and leading that team towards an outcome rather than trying to build these perfect superhumans that know it all.
Great. If we have time for one more, we're in a world of short-term goals and recognition. What steps can be taken to introduce guilds and mastery while meeting short-term needs?
So, I mean, clearly there are many short-term goals, and if you, for example, measure the cost of attrition, the cost of talented people leaving your company, and how that impacts the flow and the product line and the realization of outcomes, you will see that cost is pretty high, but it's underestimated, right? The churn normally is underestimated. So if instead you in a year of implementation, just to give you a particular experience, we were able to increase significantly our retention. And that not only lowered the cost of acquisition, but also improved our performance. So if you start measuring what really matters, you realize that investing in mastery is really a no-brainer. I think we've reached the end of the session, right, Shelby?
Yes, we are at the top of the hour.
All right. Do you want me to answer another question, or you want to wrap it up?
We do have one more.
Go ahead.
What are some of your thoughts on the more complex issues of Agile, where pods and sprint teams can't perceive the limits of their ability to understand the end user experience holistically? How do you truly QA mastery?
Good. So we believe in the power of product leadership, and we believe that the role of the product manager, which by the way is not a project manager, is to constantly sell the vision across the pods, right? Normally what we do is we have some time of a product manager allocated to each pod. You don't need a product manager per pod, but as you are, the product manager, the thing with product manager is that the product manager will be ahead, right? So they will be in the roadmap ahead of the game. And sometimes in order to understand what you're building right now, you need to understand what you're heading. So what we figured is that if the product manager is allocated to a given pod and hence is accountable for the KPIs of that pod, and if you read the book, you see that there's a whole metrics framework to really measure what matters at a pod level and across pods. Then we figured that the team really is much more engaged and more productive, and there's less instance of rework when the picture is the bigger picture is understood, or at least when they know what they don't know, right? Because in many cases they know what they know, but understanding or knowing what they don't know is a step up from being, like a cog in a machine that has no visibility across and just a lot of dependencies to deal with.
Great. We do have a few other questions that we can address afterwards, but there is one final fun one to sign us off. Is it true that the Softvision guys in Australia are rock stars?
Of course. There you go. Starting with Girish, there's a whole set already there that you have. So challenge them. So I'm looking forward to being in Australia. I was going to be in Australia in May, and this whole thing of COVID really started, and we couldn't even move. It's really tough for me to live every day at home, especially because I travel a lot. So whenever it's open up, we're going to schedule a trip there. We'll do something there with you guys. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Girish. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.